One key area that we are prioritizing is the hard-hit tourism, hospitality, and cultural sectors. So we built into our plan support, details to come, to help the tourism, the arts and culture sectors survive the immediate crisis, and also to help them come back strong in the future. These are some of the immediate steps the government is taking to build on the federal aid package and support British Columbians today. But we're also looking to the future. The COVID-19 pandemic is a massive global disruption. It's affecting each and every one of us. BC's economic sectors, industries and businesses are feeling the impact, and we know they are struggling. Our government will be establishing a recovery task force that will include representatives from BC's business and labour sectors. And to make sure that people know that we are serious about this recovery, we've set aside $1.5 billion to plan for the province's recovery. When we start seeing signs of that recovery, this funding will help provide stimulus where it's needed the most, encourage investment throughout the province and with our international partners, and further develop BC's competitiveness. So to conclude, the COVID-19 action plan focuses on 3 specific areas: protecting the health and safety of British Columbians and the people on the front lines of this crisis, bringing in immediate relief for people and businesses in our province, and coordinating with the federal initiatives, and beginning to lay the foundation for BC's economic recovery in partnership with business and labour. Each of these areas reflect our government's focus on creating a strong, sustainable economy that works for the people of this province. I want to acknowledge, as the Premier has done, that this plan is a first step, but a critical step. I want to thank particularly the public service and the staff who are working overtime to pull together the measures in this action plan and respond to the challenges and immediate needs created by COVID-19. We know there's more to do. The pandemic will present extraordinary hurdles for all of us, but we are in this together. Your government has your back. I want to wrap up by recognizing these are difficult times, but they're also incredibly heartwarming examples from people all over our province who are supporting each other. UBC nursing and medical students who are banding together to do things like grocery shopping and errands and pet care for hardworking physicians and nurses, making sure that those tasks make their lives a little bit easier during these difficult times. Commercial property owners who are waiving their tenants' rent so businesses can keep paying their staff. Servers at local restaurants who were given food to take home before their doors were shut. Communities banding together to make sure that everyone in their neighbourhood has the supplies they need. British Columbians, no surprise, are giving each other the support we need to make it through this crisis. So let's keep the thoughtfulness and the compassion going as we tackle these challenges together. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. We are going to take a few questions. We're going to start with the phone first. Please, as a reminder, everyone waiting to ask a question on the phone, please unmute your phones now. You won't be audible until we call your name. And we're going to start with Richard Zisman first.
Premier, to those who are worried about paying rent and affording to keep their homes with mortgages as well, can you speak specifically about what is here to help them and provide some clarity? Is there a ban on all evictions in British Columbia?
Well, I'll start at the end and go forward, Richard. There is, no one will lose their apartment because of COVID-19. That's not to say that there are not tenants who are in various stages of with their landlord for other reasons that have nothing to do with the pandemic, and those will continue. Minister Robinson is making a presentation to Cabinet on Wednesday, and then she'll make public the details of our action plan components with respect to renters. Minister James talked about working with financial institutions and the federal government to ensure on the mortgage side that relief is there. I know that there are still issues to be resolved, and that's why it's so critically important that all orders of government, federal, provincial, and municipal, are working as best we can to ensure common language on program delivery, as well as reinforcing again the directives from public health officials about how we should conduct ourselves within our families, within our communities, within our businesses. And when it comes to rent, this is a fundamental issue for so many British Columbians. I asked Spencer Chandra Herbert, the MLA for West End, who did an exhaustive review on the rent economy in British Columbia that presented to us last year. I asked him to kickstart that. He did a rapid consultation through his Rolodex, his contacts on his phone to talk to tenants groups, to talk to landlord organizations. He's presented that material to Minister Robinson. We'll be discussing it on Wednesday, and the results of that will be made available at that time.
Next, we're going to Rob Shaw.
Well, hi, Premier and Minister. I just wondered if you could talk a bit about settling on the $1,000 tax-free payment to people. How did we get to that number instead of $2,000 or $5,000 or $500, or what is the significance of that figure?
Hi, Rob. It's Carol James. I just wanted to make sure, as we looked at immediate supports, that we could get something out right now. It doesn't mean that we don't believe that there may be additional supports needed later. We want to, as much as we can, coordinate with the federal government when it comes to their payments that are going out as well. That's why you see a second payment coming in July on the climate action credit. But getting the $1,000 out now to be able to provide support, as you may know, EI doesn't provide full wage replacement. We know that many people were put in the situation of being laid off quickly, and we wanted to get dollars to them quickly. So we felt $1,000 can contribute towards the pressures that they are facing. Another payment coming in July. Remember as well, the federal government is putting payments in place, so they're looking at a GST credit that may come in April. So again, we tried to time the payments so that people were getting supports in each of the months between the federal payments and the provincial payments. So looking at filling gaps where they were there, and we felt $1,000 was a reasonable approach as a start.
Next up, we have Justine Hunter.
Oh, hi. Premier, you and Carol James both talked about thanking the public servants who helped put all this together. But there's also some considerable angst. I think teachers, for example, on the weekend were told they can only be assured a paycheck until the end of April. I'm just wondering what your message is to the public sector right now.
Well, broadly speaking, my message to the public sector is the same as the private sector. We need to ensure that we're all in this together. That's why we put in place a package to complement the work that's already been done by the federal government as a starting point, and we see where we go from here. We're going to have to manage issues as they emerge. The education sector is one of those sectors, forestry, and the list goes on, not just public sector, but private sector. So we've been trying as best we can to anticipate where those gaps are going to be and take steps to fill them. Again, this is a work in progress, but it is a substantial start, about 2% of our GDP. It's a significant amount of money being put directly into services for people and making sure that the liquidity issues, the cash flow issues we heard from businesses is addressed. At this stage, in March, I think we're pretty comfortable with where we're at. But we do know the important work that teachers and other workers in the K-12 system do every day as part of our community cohesion. And those are going to be critical issues as we go forward. And we'll be working with Minister Fleming's working with the BC Teachers Federation, CUPE, and other workers within the K-12 system, as well as school boards, trustees, and superintendents. So we want to have a comprehensive package, sector by sector, and that's what the Recovery Task Force will be focusing on, is where do we go from here? As I said in my opening remarks, the public wants to know day to day how we're managing the issues as they emerge. Minister Dix and Dr. Henry and her entire network of public health officials are doing an extraordinary job, as are those frontline workers, whether it's on the docks, driving trucks, making sure people are getting the groceries they need, making sure, of course, that our healthcare system is functioning and that we're taking care of the most vulnerable. All of that has to be put in and overlaid over top of what are we going to do next month and the month after that. And I want British Columbians to take comfort that we're dealing with the day-to-day, but we're also looking with a view to where are we going to be in May, where are we going to be in June, where are we going to be in July. And that's what they would expect us to do.
Vaughn Palmer. Go ahead, Vaughn.
Minister James, The Premier said last week that provincial revenues have already fallen off the cliff, and I just wondered if you've got any sense of what that's doing to your revenue projections in general. And this $5 billion that you've announced today, does that just ride on top of the budget that you tabled a month ago? Do you the parts that are revenue side come out of revenue, and the parts that are spending side go on top of the spending numbers you've already given us?
I'll start there, Vaughn. You are quite right. This is an addition to the provincial budget that has been tabled. This is not utilizing those dollars. This is additional funding for COVID to make sure we have the supports in place. We believe that's critical, and as you say, the tax measures come out of the government's bottom line. The additional spending measures will come out of this additional supplementary vote that will be introduced later today in the legislature. When it comes to revenues and government's revenues, there is no question that we are impacted, as every jurisdiction across the world is impacted. Our focus right now is making sure people get the supports they need, whether it's healthcare, whether it's income supports, whether it's business support to defer payments, to make sure that we can get through this crisis. So that's our current focus right now. We will have more details as the next couple of months go along, as this fiscal year closes off and we move into the next fiscal year. There'll obviously be a full economic statement that will come forward at the first quarterly, which is usually the end of August, beginning of September. And that'll give us more idea. But there is no question, whether we're talking about a growth in our province, whether we're talking about exports, imports, it doesn't matter, tourism, every sector is impacted. This is going to be a very challenging time, and that's why it's important that right now we're focused on getting the supports out there and helping people get through these difficulties.
Before the next one comes on, Vaughn, I would also just add that the notion of stimulus at a time when the economy is shrinking is something that you always look at, but we're seeing rapid changes in the workplace, rapid changes within the North American economy and everything that entails. So stimulus needs to be something we're looking at in a month's time. Today, we need to make sure we've got cash in people's pockets. We've got cash flow corrective measures in place for businesses. And that was job one. Minister James and her team, working with the business community, with labor, with not-for-profits, put this package together, and there'll be more to come as needed in the months ahead.
We're going to Binder Sajan next.
Hi there. I'm just wondering about this $1,000 credit. I know of a lot of people who are worried about how they are going to pay the rent, and I'm wondering, do you have a timeline? Can people expect this money before the end of the month? And what will the application process be?
We will be setting up the systems as quickly as we can, so we will get that system up and running, and hopefully the funding flowing by May. It's got to take a month to be able to get those systems in place, but we will, as I said, be working quickly to be able to get those resources to individuals. It will be an application process that will be very straightforward. Basically, if you have applied and you're receiving EI, the expanded EI criteria, so not simply people eligible for EI, but as I mentioned, people who aren't eligible, parents who are at home with their children because of schools being closed or childcare, self-employed. You will simply be able to apply, show that you've applied for EI and reach that criteria, and then we'll be able to send the check out. So we're looking to simplify this as much as possible. We'll look at how we make sure that people are aware of how they can apply so they can get those applications in as quickly as they can as well.
We're going to take a few questions from the room, starting with Tanya Fletcher.
Premier, or maybe both of you can answer this, but talking about small businesses, looking at this timeline, many that I was chatting with, for example, in downtown Vancouver, they've shut down, they're complying with the orders, many are delivering or takeout only, and some are wondering, they're teetering on the edge of, do we shut down entirely and lay off all our staff and encourage them to go on EI and apply for these benefits, or do we try and stay open, bare bones, hanging from day to day, and try to stay afloat with this help? What's your message to them?
Well, it's a difficult message, and it's a mixed message. We have clear directives from the Public Health Office through Dr. Henry that there are those businesses and those operations within the economy that we need to keep going. Childcare was one we talked about last week. There was concern in that sector, legitimate confusion about what does this mean for us. We need to make sure that those frontline workers, whether they be in healthcare, delivery of goods and services essential to the functioning of communities, food and other necessities, we need to make sure that their kids are cared for so that they can continue to come to work. And so that means we're asking the childcare sector to figure out how we do that. And it's not an edict at this point, it's how do we do that together. Similarly, with small businesses that are looking at their walk-in traffic dropping off as you would expect, who do they keep? I've talked to a couple business people who said I'm keeping on a group of staff because they've been with me for a decade and a half or more, but I'm saying to my other staff, I want you back, but we don't have enough business to keep you going. That's a difficult message for an employer to give. That's a difficult message for a government to give to the small businesses that are the backbone of our communities right across the province. But that's the way it's going to have to be. We put in place these liquidity or these cash flow solutions so that businesses are not dealing with the double whammy of not having people coming in the door and also having to meet their regular bills, as it were. So we're pushing those down the road. We're putting in place incentives to keep them going, and that's the best we can do today. And we'll continue to develop these programs as need emerges, and there will be plenty. I don't doubt that. But we're asking for people to do the best they can to depend on the safety nets that they put in place and go from there.
Next, Leslie.